Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a book haul, but specifically for some nonfiction and a little bit just non-fantasy but still fiction books. If you watched my fantasy burnout video, that will kind of explain the push for a lot of these purchases. So just to kind of summarize that video, I still love fantasy. I'm not abandoning fantasy in the slightest. It's just that there are some books that I've picked up recently that are memoirs, nonfiction, and I've so enjoyed picking those up, and I also just really crave learning and continuing to find out more about the world, other people's experiences, so on and so forth. So I asked all of you what were some of your recommendations, and I went to my local used bookstore and I picked up as many as I could find. There are still so many others that sound really interesting that I haven't found yet, but I'm going to keep looking. The number one book that was recommended to me was Know My Name. This was something that I believe with Cindy, that channel, which I'm sure most of you know who she is, but I believe that she read this and had exceptional praise for it, but it also sounds like it's incredibly difficult. It is about a sexual assault survivor. It says, in this powerful, gutsy memoir, Miller, the sexual assault survivor in the Stanford case, reclaims her name and her story. After that, I would say one of the next most recommended ones was When Breath Becomes Air, which is about a surgeon who finds out that he has cancer. For a lot of these, I'm not going to be going super in depth. I also feel like it's hard to go super in depth about memoirs because you are like, this is the person that you're going to read about. And then, you know, that's what it is. That's what you're going to be reading about. So I don't know much else besides that. I believe one of the people who recommended this was I Live You for Books, who I love. If you've never checked out their channel, I will have them linked down below. They're just such a lovely human being. But I mean, I trust all of you guys, but also having them give a stamp of approval, I was like, I have to find this. And if I don't find it at my local used bookstore, I'm just going to have to order it. But I did find it, and it was on sale. My indie bookstores are great. Next up, we have The Glass Castle. This is one that I think the reason a lot of you recommended this was because of how much I enjoyed the book Educated. Both seem to follow individuals in families where the parents are not the best at parenting, and the children end up doing everything they can to, I guess you could just honestly say, survive and get through the circumstances that they're in. And this one in particular, it seems like the siblings really bond together. And on a similar note to that one, we have The Sound of Gravel. This one I will get into a little bit more. I'll be a little more specific because it's just going a little bit beyond, this is maybe a little bit of a dysfunctional family, which to be, okay, Educated was not a little bit of a dysfunctional family. There was a lot going on in that one too. But anywho, this one in particular, just the first part, says that she was the 39th of her father's 42 children. It says after that, growing up on a farm in rural Mexico, where authorities turn a blind eye to the practices of her community, Ruth lives in a ramshackle house without indoor plumbing or electricity. At church, preachers teach that God will punish the wicked by destroying the world, and that women can only ascend to heaven by entering into polygamous marriages and giving birth to as many children as possible. After Ruth's father, the man who had been the founding prophet of the colony, is brutally murdered by his brother in a bid for church power, her mother remarries, becoming the second wife of another faithful congregant. In need of government assistance and supplemental income, Ruth and her siblings are carted back and forth between Mexico and the United States, where Ruth's mother collects welfare and her stepfather works a variety of odd jobs. Ruth comes to love the time she spends in the States, realizing that perhaps the community into which she was born is not the right one for her. As she begins to doubt her family's beliefs and question her mother's choices, the struggles to balance her fierce love for her siblings with her determination to forge a better life for herself. That sounds, oh my gosh. So there are definitely a lot of similarities if you read the book Educated. It seems like there are some similar things happening. That one does not have polygamy, but there is an extreme religious presence in that story, I guess you could say, and it seems like this one definitely has that as well. Next up, we have another one that is not a memoir, but came also highly recommended from a lot of you, and that would be Hood Feminism. This is one that I've seen a lot of people talk about also, so I had my interest piqued, and I think this one is going to complement the book Evicted quite nicely. So I read the book Evicted recently, which is a book detailing the lives of as the name would imply, individuals who have been evicted. It goes into how easy it is for people to become evicted, and to get out of eviction is very difficult. It's very easy for landlords to kind of do what they want. There's not a lot of protection for people, and it is so difficult to get on your feet once you have been evicted. There's just so many things. So I highly recommend that one. But the reason that I think that this will go along with that one really well is because of the focus of this one. So something that Evicted highlights is that so often we talk about the treatment of others, the respect that should be owed to a person regardless of their gender, their sexual orientation, their race. Of course, all of those things are true, but also just basic needs being met, and the fact that there aren't always those conversations being had, which is why I think this would complement Evicted, because obviously housing is something that is a basic need, and that's not even being met for a lot of people. But even when people do manage to get into homes, sometimes they are just the worst possible conditions because it's the only place that a person can stay. And you have children who can hardly sleep because the living conditions are so terrible. Just there's so many things that spiral and make life so much more difficult. And it seems like that's what this one is touching on as well, because it says that the author, it says food security, access to quality education, safe neighborhoods, a living wage, and medical care are all feminist issues, which is true, I think, because also in Evicted, it talks about, at least in America, the number one group of people who are likely to experience eviction are Black mothers. So I think that this book is going to highlight a lot of other things that just are, unfortunate, but that I definitely would like to be more informed on. Next up, we have The 100 Years' War on Palestine. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a lot of things going on, whether it's through the news or on social media, but I think that so much of what is happening is unacceptable. There are so many innocent people that they should not have to go through what they are currently going through. But as a result of a lot of things that have been coming about, I think it's highlighted a blind spot in my knowledge of the world, and that is why I wanted to pick this up, because this seems like it encompasses it's the 100 Years' War. It seems like it's going to encompass a pretty large amount of the history of this part of the world. Also, I have shared in a community tab, but just to kind of call attention to it again, I will have a link to a charity in the description bar that helps children who have been harmed by the violence that is occurring. Next up, we have In Order to Live. This one is about a North Korean girl. It says, a North Korean girl's journey to freedom. So this is another one that I very much wanted to pick up. There's a YouTube channel, if you've never heard of it, called Dimple, and it is a bunch of women who are from North Korea telling their experiences or comparing their experiences to other people's experiences in different parts of the world. Next up, we have a couple more memoirs. We have The Liars Club, which is one about some family issues for a family living in the United States, and then Angela's Ashes, which has to do with poverty in Ireland. I think this one is going to hit a certain way because I've mentioned before, but my father, his life was very much filled with poverty, and a lot of his experiences are ones that I kind of wish that someone could have written his life story, that he could have written his life story, because just him telling me about the things that he had to go through, it definitely kind of, shaped my perspective on class and those sorts of things. So I think this one, a lot of what I'm going to be reading is probably going to make me think about what he had to go through growing up. We also have Infidel. This one was also recommended to me by a lot of you, and this next little thing I'm going to read from the back of the book is very difficult, so if you want to skip past this one, just because maybe it might be kind of traumatic to hear, but it says that this particular woman survived civil war, female mutilation, brutal beatings, and that she escaped from a forced marriage and sought asylum in the Netherlands. A few more nonfiction, and then we'll jump into ones that are fiction, just not fantasy. This one would be Life in Motion, and it is about a ballerina, specifically Misty Copeland, who made history by becoming the first African-American female principal dancer at American Ballet Theater. I may have been wrong at the beginning. I think Know My Name was still the #1 recommended, but it's also possible that Becoming by Michelle Obama might have also been up there. But this one was highly recommended by a lot of you. I don't read a ton of memoirs that have to do with people involved in politics, but this one just came so highly recommended that I picked it up. It also was at my local used bookstore. And my husband and I both always think that the entirety of the title is Becoming Michelle Obama, not Becoming by Michelle Obama, like as in it's just becoming. We always think it's Becoming Michelle Obama. Has anybody else ever thought that? We also have Our Women on the Ground. This one is one that, it's pretty straightforward. It says essays by Arab women reporting from the Arab world, which I think that has got to be so fascinating, so interesting, but also I'm sure it's a very different experience than what it is to be reporting in different parts of the world as somebody who is not an Arab woman. So this is one my husband is also definitely really interested in. And then we have When Time Stopped, and it says a memoir of my father's war and what remains. So it would seem that this author, after her father died, they went through and were trying to find out as much as they could about their father's life, specifically being a Jewish man during World War II. A lot of those books sound absolutely amazing, but also a little depressing. So the non-fantasy section of this, I feel like some of these seem a little bit happier, a little bit more comfy. And the first one would be From Little Tokyo with Love. This sounds really sweet. It follows a character who she's currently an orphan, but finds out that maybe her mom is alive, and so she's trying to kind of find clues to discover if this is true. And it says she's accompanied by the cute actor Hank Chen, and it says that a girl like her might deserve happiness too, but as their madcap quest brings her closer to the truth and closer to Hank, her own doubts and insecurities threaten to destroy everything. In the sudden fairy tale that's taken over her life, she must decide if she's destined for tragedy or brave enough to write her own happy ending. It sounds precious, super cute, super cozy, and it's probably going to be something I'll need after reading some of those other ones. We also have The Chosen and Beautiful, which is a retelling of The Great Gatsby, but with a queer Asian main character. And this one, it says that it's a coming-of-age story full of magic, mystery, and glittering excess. I'm assuming the magic is not literally that there's magic in this, but I could be wrong. I haven't read it, but I apologize if it technically should be considered fantasy. I think they just mean like it's magic, like it's dazzling. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Next up, we have The Ones We're Meant to Find. This is by the same author who wrote Descendant of the Crane. You may have heard that that author had some issues with their publisher not paying them the way they were supposed to. And luckily, they had another publisher print this book of theirs. So happy that that situation did not result in this author losing the opportunity to tell their stories. So this one follows two sisters. One of them, it seems, is stranded on some island, and then the other one is a part of this tech company. I don't really know. It sounds very interesting and very different, kind of sci-fi. I guess sci-fi. Next up is, I'm sure, another super cozy, comfy story, and that would be Love and Olives. So I've read Love and Gelato. I've read the Love and Luck, which is kind of like a companion sequel, and then I saw this one came out, and I was like, oh, there's another one. And the first two are pretty precious, and they're very cute. So I was like, okay, this will be my little cozy. How many times am I going to say cozy? It's going to be my story that I go to when I need something adorable. That's it for some non-fantasy, non-fiction books I've picked up recently. Of course, feel free to leave me some of your recommendations. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.